Welcome to Straight to the Point. I'm your host, Representative Joe Diorsi. In a world of long-windedness, I'm here to deliver you the capital news in 10 minutes or less. So, let's get straight to the point. I am joined today by the District 99th Zone, Representative Dave Zimmerman. Dave, thanks for joining.
Yeah, no, it's good to be on with you, Joe, and very important topic here.
So, Dave, you represent, for all intents and purposes, a major swath of Amish country. You cover portions of Lancaster and Berks counties. And in addition to that, you're a farmer yourself, and you're on the Agriculture Committee. Can you kind of comment on what it's like to represent Amish folks and other folks, of course, and just your breadth of knowledge around the topic of agriculture?
Yeah, so it's very, very important, and I'm a big believer in representing my district and the people that live in it, and yeah, I have a large population of Amish and also Old Order Mennonite, which are the horse and buggy Mennonites, and for the most part, these people want to simply raise their families and have their businesses, have their farms, and take care of their own and really be kind of left alone by government. That's pretty much the attitude, and I respect that, and I think they've been really, really good people for the community. They help each other, they help neighbors, and so they're good people to have in the district, and I think government should be looking at how we can help them rather than how we can, make them kind of follow or abide by what government would like.
Yeah, and of course we're connecting today because the government has not been able to leave them alone. Tracking back in time, I want to say it was either earlier this year or last year, Dave. There was national news out of Lancaster. It had to do with Amos Miller, who's a farmer who sells natural items, raw milk, other agricultural products like that. Can you take us back into time and give us a recap of, what departments got involved there, what all went down, and what kind of overreach was that like?
Yeah, so that was an interesting story there with the Millers. So Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture would oversee milk and in our state here. When it comes to meat, that's actually overseen by USDA and not by the state. So what Amos Miller was doing is he was making raw milk available and raw milk products and also meat products. So what became issue, just a few months ago would have been the raw milk and the raw milk products. And in Pennsylvania, you can get a raw milk license, and under the raw milk license, you can sell raw milk and you can sell raw milk hard cheese. Those are the only two products that you can sell to your neighbors or family or whomever from that comes to buy those products with a Pennsylvania license. What Amos Miller does not have a license, and he was selling raw milk. He was selling, of course, the hard cheeses, but also soft cheeses like cottage cheese and other products made of raw milk. And what he was doing, though, most of his products are actually being sold out of state. And so what became very interesting in this scenario was that Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture tried to stop what he was doing there because he didn't have a Pennsylvania license. But what we've learned then is that a Pennsylvania license does not reach beyond the state border. So he could actually sell into other states, and it was really up to those states to do something if they would or will or wanted to. But so he's back in business selling mostly out of state because of not being willing to acquire a Pennsylvania state license.
Yeah, as you were speaking there, I was thinking interstate commerce is absolutely not a state matter. It's a federal matter. So
correct.
That
correct.
shipping that product across the, let's say, Maryland border would not be within the confines of the job of the State Department. So,
Yeah, and what's interesting about that too is that again, milk is a state issue, meat is a federal issue. So when it comes to milk, it's the federal government does not get involved.
so what you're saying, Dave, is that there were two sets of bureaucrats that showed up on Amos Miller's farm, not just one.
Right, and USDA was actually earlier. The more recent story would have been, from the Department of Agriculture in Pennsylvania, revolving around the milk and the raw milk products.
Yeah, very interesting. Let's come up to the present time. And discuss the avian flu. Of course, if you can give us just a brief, Dave, 30-second backdrop of what avian flu is, what species it affects. I know it's been in the news of late. There's been some cases in Pennsylvania over the last few years. It's my understanding that we have it under control. But what is avian flu, and who and what does it threaten?
Yeah, so avian flu is a virus that is mostly in poultry, and what's interesting about it is that avian in chickens, it'll kill chickens, and to try and kind of eradicate it, they, when there's a chicken house with chickens comes down with avian, they come out some morning and there's some dead birds there, they end up then just killing the whole flock. To try and eradicate it. It also gets into ducks. And what's interesting with ducks, it doesn't necessarily kill a duck. A duck will become sick and then kind of get over it. However, kind of like a cold that we might get, but then get over it. But then they're evidently carriers, and that becomes a concern. And so more recently, there's belief that avian flu has jumped into dairy cows, and there's some things going on the West Coast where some herds have been tested positive for it, and so that's the big conversation that's going on right now related to avian jumping into the dairy herds.
But as you made me aware of just the other week, Dave, there's not been a single case of this avian flu in Pennsylvania being in bovine. Am I right in saying that?
That's correct. There's not a single cow nor drop of milk have been tested positive in the state of Pennsylvania for avian influenza, for AI, here in Pennsylvania. However, the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture decided to mandate that every tanker of milk is tested for avian. So what they're doing is that a tractor-trailer truck might run around and pick up milk at these small farms and maybe have 6 or 8 farm tanks on that tractor-trailer load, and that load ends up at the dairy processor, and then that's where it's tested. And so, it's obviously taxpayer dollars that we're dealing with here, but the farm community itself is really not saying much about it, because what the Department of Agriculture here in Pennsylvania also did is they were able to acquire a federal grant to pay for this testing. So the testing is done and out at the dairy just before it's pasteurized and homogenized. And what's also interesting about all of that is that when you pasteurize milk, you're heating it at up to about 145 degrees for 30 minutes, or in some cases, the temperature's a little higher, more like 161 degrees for maybe 15 seconds. And what that does is that would kill any kind of virus that might exist. So that should not and would not be a problem. It also, by pasteurizing, would also kill any bacteria that are in there as well, good bacteria and bad bacteria.
Yeah, so this is definitely overreach. It's certainly unreasonable, and as you just described scientifically, it's almost impossible. So, lightning round question here, Dave. We discussed the Amish. They, as a sidebar, they came out this election and voted in full force. What am I reading this correctly in thinking, in saying that the department is targeting the Amish, they're targeting these farm communities in an attempt to greater regulate them?
Well, here's what's going on. There's this there's this movement across the country towards raw milk because the younger generation is wanting, more natural, less processing, no chemicals, and that's why they're interested in raw milk. And when you pasteurize milk, you're killing good bacteria and bad bacteria. When you homogenize milk, you're forcing it through a screen which breaks down the fat particles in there, and the milk no longer separates. Well, so that is why the younger generations want something more natural. And I believe the movement here by the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture is to actually stop this raw milk movement. The government should be involved in educating and talking about how you handle milk and how it can be, the safest way to do all of that. That should be government's job, not deciding whether we have raw milk or we don't. That should be an individual decision.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. He is Dave Zimmerman. He represents Amish country, the 99th. He's also a farmer and member of the Ag Committee here in the House. Dave, thanks so much for joining STTP.
You got it. Thank you.
This has been Straight to the Point. Visit repjod.com/mypodcasts.